In his video, The Most Boring Place in Tears of the Kingdom, Annie Austin drew special attention to this location in the game's map. Here you can find likes tossing rocks at you down a hill in a mountainous area. Austin pointed out that this is a reference to some of the top-down 2D Zelda games like A Link to the Past. He called this playable Easter egg a gameplay quote and issued an open invitation for anybody to make a video on this specific phenomenon.
And we don't really have good language to talk about that in games, so let's figure that out. If I have to make the video, I will, but one of you should do it. I have other things to do.
So here I am. Hi, I'm freaking Nick. Nice to meet you. I think the best way to start this video out would be to clearly define what kind of Easter egg we're talking about. The proper term for what Annie Austin calls a gameplay quote is an homage, but that term has a really broad definition. In the arts, an homage is when one artist shows respect to another through an allusion or an imitation. In film, this is done quite often through the use of shot composition, blocking, wardrobe, dialogue, fight choreography, and so on. Since video games are an interactive media that depend on user inputs, in gaming, homage can also refer to sections of gameplay that clearly imitate something that came before. And that's the specific type of homage that we're talking about in today's video. For simplicity's sake and for SEO purposes, I'm going to use the term gameplay homage instead of gameplay quote. So while this kind of immersion-breaking line of dialogue is technically an homage,
it's a me, Mario!
It's not what we're talking about because it's just a line of dialogue. And this item in Skyrim called the Notched Pickaxe is a low-effort homage that alludes to Minecraft, but it's not what we're talking about either. This section in Star Wars Jedi Survivor, however, is exactly what we're talking about and what we're looking for. It's a playable homage where Cal Kestis is reminded how to wall jump by 3 small alien creatures that show him how to do it, which imitates a gameplay segment from the 1994 game Super Metroid. I'd go so far as to say that gameplay homages are my favorite subgenre of Easter eggs in media, full stop. It's the kind of thing that can only really happen in video games that fully embrace the medium. I mean, anybody can just name an item after another franchise or squeeze in a line like,
I've got a bad feeling about this.
But it takes a measure of craftsmanship, care, and attention to detail to make an homage that you can actually play and that feels authentic to the game's DNA, while also being a good wink to the audience of people who know what the game is referencing. The first kind of gameplay homage that I want to talk about in this video is games that reference the roots of their own franchises. The example from Tears of the Kingdom is a neat one because it's taking a staple of 2D Zelda and translating it into a 3D space while offering a bit of a deep cut to longtime fans of the series. It's subtle enough that if you're either not familiar with the older games or if you're too busy watching a video essay while you play on your Nintendo Switch, you know who you are, then you might miss it. But this next one is a little bit more blatant. If I were to show you this random collection of shapes, you would probably know what I'm referencing. World 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. Is the most iconic level in all of video games. And it's for good reason. Just in these first few seconds of this level, you get your bearings for how the game's blocks, power-ups, movement, and enemies all work. This was the world's first impression of Super Mario as a potential franchise, and they really stuck the landing here. To honor this specific level of their storied history, Nintendo has recreated it several times as a versus level in New Super Mario Bros., as a map in Smash Bros., a handful of other times, and most recently in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. One thing that surprises me is that this iconic section with the block layout and the Goomba hasn't been recreated in any of their 3D games as far as I can remember. Though I do think that would probably be because you could just walk around it. But those limitations did not stop the next one that we're going to talk about. Green Hill Zone is the first level of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. And while it has appeared in several Sonic games, I want to talk about the first time they ported this map over to 3D because it really is something special. Green Hill Zone is your reward for getting all A ranks on every single emblem in every single level of Sonic Adventure 2. To me, this is not only a peak reference, but it's also a great way to reward gamers for grinding out the challenges because it actually feels like a faithful adaptation of a 2D level in a 3D space. They even replaced a lot of the sound effects with ones that are pulled straight from the classic games, and they added enemies from the original game that are found nowhere else in Sonic Adventure 2. Don't get me wrong, this level experiences a bit of roughness around the edges from being ported over to 3D, but I do find it really charming that they were willing to sacrifice the playable quality of the level in order to maintain the integrity of the original game's style and design. But yeah, you're basically traveling down a winding, narrow ribbon for the entire time. The final game that I want to talk about that does self-referential gameplay homages is Doom 2016. Tucked away in each level of this game is a secret lever that when you pull it, it makes a nice little retro sound that takes you straight back to the Clinton administration. Then when you return from off the beaten path, you find a door that was once closed is now open, but the inside of it looks a little weird. The interiors to these rooms, as well as the power-ups that you can grab inside of them, look like they were pulled straight out of Doom 1 and 2. However, you and the enemies that you're turning into red smears look like you do normally in the Doom reboot. This results in an objectively delightful clash in art styles. Completing these mini rooms unlocks full playable stages that are almost one-to-one recreations of levels from the original games, complete with original soundtracks. If you take this, throw in some Saturday morning cartoons, and a splash of satanic panic, it will really take you back to the 1990s. But now let's take a step back from these gameplay homages that deal exclusively with prior entries in the same franchise and move towards inter-franchise references. Celeste is, in my opinion, one of the best 2D platformers of all time. And in Chapter 4 of this game, there is an homage to another one of the best 2D platformers of all time. This white platform confused the hell out of players when the game first came out, and it made me feel old for knowing what it referenced immediately. If you don't know, this platform originates from Super Mario Bros. 3. That game's whole design aesthetic is as if it were a stage play, and these platforms are presented as part of the set that you can jump on and jump off of. The white platforms are unique because if you stand on top of them and crouch, Mario will fall behind the foreground and become one with the background. This allows you to reach secret areas. And in Celeste, these same rules apply. If you get on top of it and crouch, Maddie Celeste will fall into the background, thus allowing you to reach this otherwise unreachable crystal heart. You could base an entire channel about finding references and Easter eggs from Undertale and Deltarune, but I'm gonna go with one from each game for this video. In Undertale, you can find the humble snail farmer, Napstablook, who lets you play a game called Thunder Snail. In this, you bet 10 gold on the little yellow snail winning a race, and you have to encourage her enough so that she beats the other two snails. It seems like it's partly an homage to the Chow races from Sonic Adventure 2, maybe a little bit of the dog races from Majora's Mask, and also it's just a SpongeBob reference. But what I really appreciate about Toby Fox's game design is he knows just how far to push an homage and when to flip it on its head. Because in games like this, you're used to looking for a stamina meter, and if you don't see one, then you just spam the encourage button to make your character go fast. So that's exactly what the player does. But if you do this, it overwhelms the snail, and she crumples under the weight of your expectations. So by the time you've spent 30 or 40 gold on all of this, you find the sweet spot and make it so your snail wins. And your prize is 9 gold, because Napstablook needs to make a profit. And so the real trick to beating Thunder Snail is you need to cheer on the yellow snail just enough so she narrowly comes in second, because if you do that, she will think that she won, and Napstablook, not wanting to offend his snail, will award you with 30 gold. Genius. Deltarune has so many homages to classic video games, but the one that I want to talk about is the fight against the Queen in Deltarune Chapter 2. In this one, you hop into a mech suit, as one does when you're about to fight a monarch, and you start doing some turn-based combat until the Queen tells you how to control your robot. After this, the entire dynamic of the fight changes to this real-time one-on-one combat encounter where you're taking jabs and dodging, and it's Punch-Out. It's literally just the game Punch-Out. Her attacks are telegraphed to the point where you have a chance to interrupt with a counterattack or dodge and follow up. She's got special attacks that are probably not legal in boxing, just like the original Punch-Out game. But yeah, this is one of the most jaw-droppingly hell yeah moments in gaming for me. The attention to replicating all of the small details and animation quirks of Punch-Out while still maintaining the signature Toby Fox DNA is just incredible. While this next gameplay homage doesn't reference a video game, I have to give a shout out to Sifu specifically because it pays homage to several iconic action movies in each of its levels. The most notable one is the first level, in which you find yourself in a brawl that takes place down a long hallway while you are swarmed with enemies. It is a clear as day reference to Oldboy's extra long one-take fight scene, which itself has been emulated and homaged upon across all media for the past 2 decades. There's something so compelling about seeing the protagonist needing to get from point A to point B with tons of enemies in the way and nowhere to go but through that just makes you want to root for them, and it makes these kinds of scenes just so good. It's probably cheating to include Borderlands in a video about video games that make references to other video games, but this Easter egg goes a little above and beyond their typical MO of just slipping in a LOL XD line of dialogue or naming one of their 80,000 guns after another IP. If you go to the northwestern part of the Caustic Caverns and go off the beaten path a little bit in Borderlands 2, you will see some dirt blocks pulled straight out of Minecraft. The only way to break these is to melee them several times, just like in Minecraft. Following through takes you to a cavern full of several creepers pulled directly from Minecraft and nets you a bunch of Minecraft-related memorabilia. I thought it was a fun little playable Easter egg. We've talked a lot about small playable moments that pay homage to other games, but how about taking an entire game and putting it inside of another game? Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth does this. Twice, as far as I know. Dondoko Island is a section of the game where Ichiban is tasked with restoring an island resort. He does so by harvesting resources, clearing out trash, crafting items, and making buildings for people to stay in, hoping to attract more guests to visit the resort. It's Animal Crossing. The other gameplay homage is the Sujimon League. In Infinite Wealth, you have the ability to capture enemies called Sujimon. You, as Ichiban the ultimate side quester, find ways to just burn a lot of time with these guys. You can train them, battle them, level them up, evolve them, and challenge the Discrete Four in order to become the Sujimon champion. The battles are 3-on-3, there are weaknesses and resistances, and the minigame is surprisingly in-depth with a ton of Sujimon you can capture to fill up the Suji decks. And between you and me, I'd go so far as to say that it's a little bit more engaging than Pokemon has been recently. But now we're down to the last 3 games that I want to talk about, and those are games that base their entire identity around a love of video games and are therefore stuffed full of gameplay homages. In Astrobot, you are a tiny robot trying to reassemble your PS5-shaped spaceship while finding your marooned crew, about a third of which are robots styled like iconic characters from various franchises. There are hero homage levels in which the developers give their family-friendly take on various games from PlayStation's storied history. We have Apes on the Loose, in which you chase pesky monkeys around and catch them with a net, just like in Ape Escape. Bot of War has you wielding the Leviathan axe, and you can throw it at enemies and recall it at will. The attacks feel weighty, and it does a surprisingly good job at evoking the vibes of the last 2 God of War games while maintaining Astrobot's colorful identity. The Uncharted level gives Astro a gun, poking fun at how Nathan Drake is one of the most notorious mass murderers in all of fiction. It goes on. While I don't necessarily give Astrobot the title of my Game of the Year 2024, that would probably go to either Balatro or Mouthwashing, I can see why it got so much acclaim. It does a great job at honoring and celebrating the past while towing the line of feeling a bit exploitative, but it doesn't cross that line. The final 2 games are from the developer Hazelight Studios, and they are proof that EA can actually fund good games if they just stand back and let their developers cook. It Takes Two and Split Fiction genuinely feel like love letters to gaming as a whole, and for good reason. Joseph Fares designs all of his games to feel like the good old days where you're playing couch co-op with a friend, and he injects those games with a heavy dose of homages and references that show his deep love of the medium. Early on in It Takes Two, while you are standing atop an airplane made out of underpants, you are challenged to a one-on-one fight to the death by a squirrel who knows Hadouken. New sentence just dropped, by the way. This section of the game turns into Street Fighter. A later section of the game pays tribute to Diablo, where one of you plays as a barbarian and the other as a sorcerer, and the game's UI, camera angle, and combat all shifts to complete the game's transformation to Diablo, basically. Since Split Fiction is still relatively new, I don't want to get too far into the details of what this game has to offer, but early on it has an Assassin's Creed homage that comes with a really cheesy one-liner.
You've got to have faith when you leap.
A little bit later, you get to Lisan al-Gaib all over the place, and there's a level that's pulled straight out of SSX Tricky. I think no matter your opinion on the quality of games like It Takes Two and Split Fiction, you cannot play these games without thinking that Hazelight is anything but passionate about video games. So in conclusion, gameplay homages are the best kind of Easter egg that there is. Full stop. I would pick a reference that pays tribute to the craftsmanship that goes into game design over a random quote or a weapon named vaguely similar to a recognizable IP any day of the week and twice on a Sunday. It is, in my opinion, the ultimate kind of homage and one that can only happen in video games. And while there are probably hundreds or thousands of other gameplay homages or playable Easter eggs or gameplay quotes that I didn't get around to, I'm going to defer that to you guys. Let me know in the comments if there are any that you think are fantastic that I may have missed. These are just the ones that came to mind when I was coming up with ideas, and they're based on my own life and experiences. I hope this was an entertaining video for you specifically, guy who has me pulled up on his phone and is hoping his boss or his teacher don't notice. And if the stars align and the algorithm bestows upon you another video of mine sometime down the line, I hope to see you then. And if not, I hope you have a great rest of your life, and I hope, above all else, that all of you are taking care of yourselves.